Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors could talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We are on Facebook. If you want to direct a question to The Writer's Dream, please put it on the Facebook page. It's just called The Writer's Dream. And all the shows are on YouTube, and so you will be able to see interviews with about 100 authors on the show. And if you're interested in becoming a writer, there's a lot of good advice on those shows for budding writers. Today's guest today is Beth Czubay, and she has written a book called Easy Out on Third, Raising a Child with Special Needs. And Beth is a cancer survivor. She has raised a child with special needs, 3 others. She lives here on Long Island with her husband. She's had a successful career, and now she is an author. So Beth, tell us about your book, Easy Out on Third. Isn't that about baseball?
It is about baseball. It's a twofold story. The first part is raising a child with special needs, which I don't think anybody is ever really prepared for. So that's one part of the book. And then the other story is the different environment in sports from when I grew up or when my brothers, played youth sports, and how competitive and crazy it gets. And so if you take a special needs child who loves sports and put him in that arena, it doesn't always end good. But in my case, it did. So.
Well, that's important. So tell us about your journey about finding out that you were going to have a special needs child, because you knew ahead of time. Yes.
Yes.
What was that like? What was the process involved?
Well, I had 2 children and my husband had 1, so together we had 3 children, and we were just kind of getting used to blending the families, and that in itself was a challenge. And then when we discovered we were going to have a baby, and we were excited. We thought, okay, this will be the glue that holds it all together, and it would just be a yours, mine, and ours kind of situation. And then I would say about 3 months into the pregnancy, some tests started coming back less than perfect. And
why did you have those tests?
Well, firstly, I was over 35. I was maybe 38 at the time, so they called my pregnancy a geriatric pregnancy. It sounds terrible. I'm so young, and
I love it.
They called it geriatric. And then once they find, any of those tests come back wrong, then it was a high-risk geriatric pregnancy. So, you go, you do what your doctors tell you, and you go for all these testings, and then I was probably 4.5 months pregnant when I went to a high-risk doctor. And he basically, just on the results of a few tests, looked me in the eye and told me that I should, not go forward with the pregnancy, because the chances of having even the resemblance of a normal baby would be impossible. And he threw me for a loop, and once I got over my shock and I went home and I talked to Steve and I said, and it was even not legal in the state of New York, and not that I ever considered it. And I remember being very upset, and when I talked to him, he just said, it's going to be okay. We're going to do this, and he's always like my grounding force. So we just decided to go forward with the pregnancy. And at this point, I was like 4.5 months pregnant, and the rest of the pregnancy was emotional. We were dealing with a lot of testosterone in my house, a lot of boys, a lot of action, a lot of activities, blending the 2 families, and the stress of the uncertain. Mm-hmm. Which in some ways it was good that we were so busy, because we couldn't dwell on it as much as, life went on, and we both worked full time. We were in the process of getting a place together. So when my son was born, and we were very aware that he was going to have a club foot and a few different things, but a lot of the tests that they were suggesting were going to damage the pregnancy even further, or give it, add more risk. And yet I would say, is the outcome, can you fix it? Can you, make it better? No. So what's the point of having these tests? So we just kind of said, we're just going to go forth with the pregnancy and see what happens.
Did you go for genetic counseling?
After he was born, we did.
Okay.
When he was a couple of years old, we did.
Because I'm curious to know, when they did these tests, how were they able to determine that? Could they tell from a sonogram that he was going to have a club foot?
Sonograms and different.
Did you have amniocentesis?
I refused the amniocentesis.
Yeah, because it's high risk.
It's high risk, and we knew we were going to have a child with special needs, so I didn't need to know exactly.
But they didn't know any more than the club foot, or they
saw? All the different spina bifida, the tests would come out that it was, and then I would go for that was a screening, and I would go for the more accurate test, and they'd say it wasn't. Then they told me there was a tumor in his brain, and then when I had that, some kind of a high-tech sonogram, they said, oh, no, it's not. So they weren't the outcomes weren't always accurate to what they would scare you. stress you out, and then they'd be like, no, it's good. So it just didn't, we just decided to end all testing. In fact, the doctor group that I used, there was maybe 13 doctors, and they encouraged you to see each doctor, so that when when you delivered, you know all the doctors. And half of them like quit my team. They said, if you won't consider this test, we won't have anything to do with you. We were like, okay. So we were down to like 4 doctors, and.
But no, you said that. Did you indicate that abortion was illegal at that time?
Well, at a 4.5-month pregnancy in the state of New York, yes.
It was illegal, okay.
And it was the day before Thanksgiving that he almost told me this, and I was devastated, and that I would have to go to Massachusetts. It was never an option for me in that situation.
Yeah. Well, I could see that, but now, okay, so the baby is born.
The baby is born, and I'm in the hospital, and out comes this beautiful 8-pound, 15-ounce, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, beautiful angel is the only way I can describe him. Now, I had given birth 2 other times, and I had a stepson, so I know every mother, when they give birth, they say, oh, it's the most beautiful baby, and I felt that way with all 3 of my children, but with him, I can't even explain. I felt like I'd won the lottery. Like, we kept saying...
Well, you were expecting...
We didn't know what to expect.
You were expecting something less than
yes.
what you got. Let's put it that way.
And it was amazing. And he did have a club foot, and there were, obviously down the line there was going to be some problems. But in fact, I gave birth to him. I nursed him. They took him away. And the first time I actually met him after that, he had a cast on his foot. They brought him in with a cast, no consulting with me. So this started the relief that he was okay, he was beautiful, and we would get through this. And it was like he's 15 years old now, but it's been a journey. And the first few years were very intense.
So when you left the hospital, did you leave with a list of agencies to
yes.
to get in touch with
yes.
to help you out with whatever is going to happen to him?
Yes.
And was it just the club foot? Was it anything else?
There was some, as he, I would say he was probably a couple weeks old, and a nurse knocked on my door, and she introduced herself as she was with early intervention. And I guess if a child has more than 3 documented disabilities, by law, they send us. And at first I was like, no, we're good. He just has a club foot. And it basically reminded me of like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that we were handed, and we had to spend the next 15 years putting the pieces together, and we're still not done. But we've come a long way. And early intervention, at first, like I said, I was not very welcoming of them, because in my mind, I guess I was in denial, and I said, he's good, we worked on the foot. But then as he progressed, it was clear that he wasn't as advancing as a normal child would. And even as the mother of 2 children,
developmental delays is what they call it.
That was global delays, developmental delays. But even as a parent of 2 children that I should have known when they should sit up, when they should do this, I guess I was in denial. But it was only about 2 or 3 months into his life that I realized they became my best friend, my biggest advocate, my go-to for everything. And they were wonderful. And, it's a process. So they get you through the first few years, and then he goes into school. And
then the school takes over.
Yes.
Yeah. So were you satisfied with what the schools did?
I've been thrilled with what the schools did. Yeah, the services on Long Island are amazing.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
Yes.
So how does this connect to baseball?
How it connects to baseball. So we're raising this child who, if you go to 4 doctors, you get 4 different opinions, 4 different, do this, don't do this. So we realized early on that we had to become advocates for this boy, and we had to learn quickly. So every time we're presented with a problem, we take it situation by situation. We go to a few doctors, we get a few opinions, and we work on it. So now I see he's almost 2 years old. He's not walking. He's not anywhere near walking. He's got, cast, brace, different obstacles to walking for the first 2 years of his life. And I look at him, and because we had the older boys who loved sports, loved baseball, loved basketball, and I would see this little boy who loved baseball at that time and think, if he doesn't walk, he'll never be able, something simple as playing Little League will not happen for him. So that was my motivation to, maybe step outside the box and get him to walk. And we actually did that through a physical therapist and some braces that the surgeon told us don't do, but we did it, and it worked. So, if we went to a diner, if we were eating dinner, he would sit at the table and he would take the salt and pepper shakers and he would line them up like the bases and use a sugar packet and a straw, and he would make a baseball game anywhere, anytime. Somebody for his first birthday gave him one of those Fisher-Price T-ball, the little, and he would line up storybooks. Goodnight Moon was home plate, and he would line up the storybooks. He would hit the bat, and he would crawl on all fours to do the bases. So he loved baseball, and basketball was the same thing. So when he was 4 or 5 years old, and it's time to sign him up for T-ball, and we had the question, do we do the Challenger League or the mainstream? And all the people that we respected and that were involved in baseball said, try him in regular baseball, in the mainstream league. And we did. And, like I said, my husband played softball, managed the softball league, coached my other kids. So it was part of our life. So we put him in baseball. And in T-ball, if anybody has children that you've ever, or grandchildren that you go to their games, T-ball is like kindergarten. I mean, they teach you how long do the games last till the ice cream man shows up. I mean, you're teaching them to wait their turn, to be patient, to be part of a team. There's no skill required.
Right.
And then as each level, as they become, the different levels in baseball, it becomes apparent who's got skill, who doesn't, but it's Little League. And it shouldn't just be about kids having fun and playing, especially at that young age.
Right. How did his disabilities affect your other 3 children? How did they react to it?
Actually, in a very positive way, I have to say, because I think it humbled them, and I think it made them have more empathy towards people. My oldest son, Brian, is actually a life coach for a disabled adult group home up in Walton, New York.
Wow, how old is he now?
He's 27.
Yeah, okay.
And just being around him and learning patience, and I think it's made them better people. I think it's made us all better people.
Maybe gratitude too.
Yes,
For their own.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's
I think
good.
it's changed them all. They're all very compassionate people.
And probably your attitude, your very positive attitude towards this, I'm sure had some impact on this.
Well, you have to, when life throws you a curve, you have to deal with it. So you either curl up in a ball or you say, I'm going to deal with this. And
So I interrupted you. Your son was in the, Bobby?
Bobby,
Bobby is in the midst of
playing baseball.
moving up in Little League, and what happened?
So
He's 15 now.
he's 15 now, yes. He's just started high school. I can't believe it. I don't know everyone says, how's the baby? I said, he's in high school now. He's
Yeah.
taller than me. He's like 5'10", or he'll say he's 5'11". He's about 5'8", 5'9". But I knew baseball inside and out. I had 5 brothers. Like I said, my husband coached the older boys. When he was about 8 years old, he was just playing in whatever division was, the Farms, or I forget what they called it. And I just remember, like, there were days when I never take anything for granted, and I would just sit there at the ball game, eating a hot dog, looking, just like loving life, and just like, I can't believe we've come this far. He's running the bases, he's playing. He maybe wasn't the best player, he certainly wasn't the worst. He was a little kid playing Little League. And if you Google the mission statement of Little League baseball, it's to create good citizens, not necessarily good athletes. And believe me, I've checked it. And
That's not what I hear from a lot of people.
no, it's the way it should be. And I get, like, it feels great to win. Everybody wants to win, but you have to be able to lose with dignity. And if you're going to play anything, checkers, Monopoly, baseball, soccer, you have to be able to lose. And it was just funny to me how, and I don't know if I was more sensitive or more aware of it because of Bobby's situation, but how crazy and competitive these parents got, like, as if their mortgage was riding on the outcome of this game. And I would just sit there like, really? And looking back when the other boys were at this age, I'm like, is it my imagination or is it more competitive and crazy? And it was definitely not my imagination, because I can remember them playing long into high school, and I just don't remember this craziness. So there was one particular game, and I won't bore you with the details, but we were at the game, and I was just, again, every time I saw him out there in that uniform, it was like a little girl in a princess outfit. Like, he put that baseball uniform on with such pride, and his cleats and his mitt, and he's playing the game, and the scenario was that he was on third base. Now, if he got called out, then we would have gone on to another inning and the other team would have another chance. But if he got to home, we won the game and the game was over. And this coach, I just was sitting there, is he really acting like this? He was an obese man who was so red and just fired up over this whether the 8-year-old was going to make it to home plate. And again, would anything change if he did or he didn't? And he was just getting so riled up. And in the course of this play, he pointed to my son very loudly and said, "Easy out on third, easy out on third." And I felt like somebody slapped me. It means that he's an easy out. It means
baseball.
don't worry about the boy who's up at bat trying to get him out. Get the easy out on third. And it just stung like a bee. And my son didn't notice because he was so, just focused on getting home. And my husband was busy coaching a team. And I looked around in the bleachers, and a couple of other people, realized. And it's like, it's one thing if a coach says, okay, the big hitter, back up. You're complimenting the player. You're being a good coach. You're using strategy. But to single a child out and call him an easy out, to me, it was just very wrong. And it just, confirmed the fact that it's getting crazy, and it's all youth sports. You see it all the time. Parents having wars behind the scenes over a soccer game or a hockey game.
So did he go home?
He did go home. He did go home. He won. He brought in the winning run, which was kind of funny because the next kid, I guess, hit. He got home. Game was over. We won. So I didn't say anything at that point. We kind of went home. Got ice cream, went home, celebrated. When he was in bed, and I was sitting with my husband, I said, "Did you hear what that coach said?" And I don't think he didn't take it as hard as I did, but he said, "Well, that's just the way it is." I said, "But that doesn't mean it's right." So I went to the league and I filed a formal complaint, and nothing but good things came of it. So in the end, I guess the coach was reprimanded, and they, at that age, at 8 years old, I guess that's when they start to have like tournament teams, or they can. And I get the fact that if you're a skilled player, you want to play, you want to win, you want to be competitive, that's great. But there's a lot of outlets for that. There's tournament teams, there's travel teams. As you get older, you can try out for the school teams. But this is Little League. To me, it's sacred. It's like it shouldn't be that way, especially at 8 years old.
Yeah.
So what we did was we got the league to give us 2 nights a week at Town Hall, Babylon Town Hall, and it was called the Field of Dreams. And all the kids who weren't on tournament teams or weren't on all these travel teams got to just come down and play for the sake of loving the game. When the season ended, their season didn't have to be over, and we did that all summer. And it was an amazing thing that the league did for the kids, because I don't even think they charged them.
Is he playing baseball now?
No, this is the first year he's not.
Okay, so was it always Little League or was it school team?
It was always Little League with baseball, and last year was the first. It just got into a new level of traveling, and my husband was working nights. It just didn't work out for us, but maybe next year we'll go back to it.
Is he still involved in sports?
Oh yes, he played lacrosse all summer, and
Wow.
he's a big basketball player too. That's his new claim to fame.
So lacrosse is a lot of running, so
Yeah, he loves it.
I'm assuming that the club foot
Oh yeah,
was fixed.
He 2 surgeries later, 5 years later, a lot of physical therapy and bracing and.
What are his challenges in school?
Well, he's in a special ed self-contained classroom. He learns as good as you or me. He just learns different. So if you get an educator who's intelligent and trained enough to know you can't put a round peg into a square hole and teach him the way he needs to be taught, he does very well. He made honor roll every single quarter in middle school.
Wow.
All 3 years. And a couple of times it was like high honor roll. He does the same curriculum as the other children. He just has accommodations in how he learns the information.
Right.
So everything's a challenge for him, but you never know it. He's just a very confident, happy person.
Yeah, well, that's the
And
most important thing.
It is.
That's
His
the most
attitude is
important thing.
great.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. How did you publish? How did you find writing the book? What
I
challenge-
loved writing the book. The story happened in my mind all along, and I don't know if it's everybody or just me, but I always think, okay, I have like the movie of the week. I have I always think my life is a story, is a book, and I have a big family, and we're big Irish Catholics, and we always say, like, okay, we're gonna do a family movie, and we cast ourselves, like we mentally, like Valerie